and tangent is opposite over adjacent. And then we've got the reciprocals. Alright, so 1 over sine of theta, its reciprocal is cosecant of theta, which is the reciprocal of that, or hypotenuse over opposite. We've got 1 over cosine theta, its reciprocal is secant of theta, so that's hypotenuse over adjacent. And then we've got the reciprocal of tangent, which is cotangent of theta, and so it's adjacent over opposite. Okay, and also tangent is sine over cosine, but we'll talk about that in more detail later. Alright, so here are your 6 trig functions. Like I said, this is the big 3. You probably have heard of that, SOHCAHTOA. And I don't know how you choose to remember those 6 trig ratios and what they are, but you have to know them because that's what this course is all about. Okay, so let's do some problems from 6.2. Alright, so this is number 4. And number 4 just asks for the 6 trig ratios. I'm given all 3 sides. So I would probably label them if I were you, just so you can quickly look at it. Remember that the side all across from my hypotenuse, the side across from my right angle is always my hypotenuse. There's my theta. If you can see, it's kind of blurry, but there's my side across from theta, so that's my opposite. And then the side right next to my theta is my adjacent. Alright, so we've got the sine of theta, opposite over hypotenuse. So we've got 7 over 25. Cosine of theta, adjacent over hypotenuse, 24 over 25. And then we've got tangent, which is my opposite over my adjacent, so 7 over 24. Okay, and the reciprocals, cosecant, flip it, secant, and that means cotangent is going to be 24 over 7. That's easy enough. Okay, if you label it and recognize all 3 of your sides, you shouldn't have any problem with that. Alright, number 8, I'm given my theta. I've got a right angle right here. I'm only given 2 sides. What 2 sides am I given here? Well, I'm given the side across from theta, so there is my opposite. I'm given the side across from my right angle, and that's my hypotenuse. I do not have my adjacent side. But if you remember from geometry, that the Pythagorean Theorem tells me that I can solve all 3 sides of the triangle because I know that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So in this case, I've got my hypotenuse, I've got my c squared. So I need either a or b, and it doesn't matter how you label it. So I've got 7 squared plus b squared equals c squared, which in this case is 8 squared. So I've got 49. I'm just doing some simple algebra here to figure out what b is. So b squared is going to equal 15, so b is going to equal the square root of 15, which means this third side, or my adjacent side, is the square root of 15. Alright, so I'm still looking for my 6 trig ratios. The sine of theta is going to be my opposite over my hypotenuse. Cosine of theta is my adjacent, which I found to be the square root of 15 over my hypotenuse. And then the tangent of theta is going to be my opposite over my adjacent. Now, you will never see an answer in this trig class written like this in the back of your book. When you get to higher level math classes, it's okay to leave a radical in the denominator, but for now we're not going to. So I'm going to get rid of the square root of 15. Do that really easily by multiplying If you multiply radical square root by itself, you get rid of the square root. So I'm going to multiply the square root of 15 by the square root of 15. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top, which means this is just going to simplify to the 7 times the square root of 15 over 15. Alright, so that's sine, cosine, and tangent, and you can find the other three because they're just reciprocals of these three. Okay? I'm going to keep going. Let's look at 16. So 16 asks us to find the side labeled x. So this is my unknown, and I'm going to use what I know in order to find the length of side x. Now, I could do this in two ways. If you remember special right triangles, and you recognize that this is a 45, 45, 90 triangle, then you should also remember that the hypotenuse is one of those sides times the square root of 2. So I could look at this triangle pretty easily and just go, well, this is 12 times the square root of 2. If you do not remember that, then you're going to need to use your trig ratios in order to find this side x. So if I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, all right, I know that both of these angles are 45 degrees. I need to find this x value. Well, what is the relationship with this angle and the sides that I'm given? 12 is across from that angle, which means there is my opposite side. And then x is across from that right angle, which means that's my hypotenuse. So if I'm thinking what trig function uses opposite and hypotenuse, well, that's sine. So I know that the sine of 45 degrees is going to equal the opposite over my hypotenuse, which is what I'm looking for in this problem. So I've got sine of 45 degrees equals 12 over x. Now I'm just solving this for x. The easiest way to do this when you've got a proportion, just cross multiply. So I've got x times the sine 45 degrees equals 12. If you're solving for x, you divide by whatever's with x. So x is going to equal 12 divided by the sine of 45 degrees. And when you plug that in your calculator, I don't know what the answer is. It ends up being 16 point some value. And you can plug that in your calculator. I think the book tells you to round it to 4 or 5 decimal places. I'm not sure. Okay, so we're going to go on. Same thing here, number 20. I'm looking for my unknown. This isn't one. This isn't a special right triangle that I can just look at and do. But I'm going to do it just like I did this one. So I am looking at my reference angle. It's 58 degrees. And I'm looking at what I'm given. So I've got my hypotenuse, that's my unknown, and I've got the opposite. This is just like number 16. So maybe I'm just going to set this up and let you finish it out. Alright, so I know that the sine of 58 degrees is going to equal my opposite over my hypotenuse. Same thing here. Cross multiply, so the sine of 58 degrees times x, or x times 58 degrees, sine of 58 degrees, doesn't matter, equals 25. Divide both sides by the sine of 58 degrees. And plug that in your calculator and get whatever that answer is. So I don't have the answer written down. Alright, one more.